Welcome to the second episode of the Sport Analytics podcast. Today, we're joined by Maezelle Millan, who is a senior data analyst at the Chicago Bulls. Maezelle, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, and you've had a really interesting journey, and it'll be great if you can outline it. So you've had a
Yeah.
fascinating journey, from being a college basketball player at Claremont McKenna College, and now you're the senior data analyst at the Chicago Bulls. Can you walk us through your career progression and how your experiences as a college athlete influence your professional path?
For sure. So at Claremont McKenna, I played basketball throughout my whole career there, but the school's also very career focused and pretty academically rigorous. So after college, I kind of knew I would be outside of basketball and do something business related somehow. So I majored in economics and went into management consulting, which is so separate from anything basketball related. But I wanted to do something kind of, challenging and still using my strategic thinking. And as an athlete, I kind of did a lot of that. As a point guard, I always had to kind of survey the court, try to figure out how to solve whatever defenses they're throwing at us. So kind of using that analytical mindset and strategic thinking and putting that into something outside of basketball. But once I started, working for about a year or so, I realized that I don't want to do something that I'm not passionate about. And that's kind of where, as an athlete, I've been drawn to doing something that I really want to be doing every day, even if it's not the highest paying job or the most glamorous thing. And so that's when I decided to go back into the basketball world and wanted to apply that same kind of analytical thinking and strategic thinking and putting that into the sports industry. And so I applied for the role as a data analyst at the time at the Chicago Bulls and kind of make that transition. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's really interesting. So you obviously started as a data analyst at the Bulls, and now you're the senior data analyst. So how did your responsibilities evolve as you transitioned from one role to another, and what skills or strategies were most critical in terms of earning that promotion?
For sure. So, kind of my functions have stayed the same. As a data analyst, senior data analyst, you're kind of doing similar things, but I think the difference is that my responsibility has increased. And so, in the beginning, my manager was kind of the main point of contact for my stakeholders, which is mainly the corporate partnerships team. Now, I'm kind of the person taking charge of that. I'm taking ownership of the project management standpoint, where I'm taking charge of timelines, deadlines. I'm the one pushing it onto my stakeholders. And also above that, kind of there's a higher standard of quality of work when it comes to the reports that I'm creating or the recommendations I'm making. And so the functions are the same. There's just higher responsibility. And now I'm kind of leading the biweekly meetings rather than just participating in it. So that's kind of how the role has changed. But definitely the biggest, most important qualities that I had to present was taking ownership of that project management piece and really taking charge of the timelines and also building that trust with my stakeholders and that confidence in the work that I provide.
Yeah, it's great to see how your responsibilities have evolved over time. Before you were with the Bulls, you were in consulting. So, I want to ask, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced, transitioning from consulting at Semler Brossy to analytics in professional sports, and how did you adapt to those changes?
Yeah, I think the biggest and most surprising challenge is, sports teams, even though, the Chicago Bulls is a global brand and a lot of people know what it is, it's an organization that's well known. It's still a pretty small organization compared to, let's say, like a big company. And although I came from a smaller consulting company, there were resources and training sessions set and established, and that's something that you kind of work towards and it's provided to you. In a sports company, the analytics teams are small. Our team has gotten bigger in the last year or so, but typically they range from like maybe 5 to 15 is kind of on the higher end. And so really you have to wear a lot of hats and you have to be resourceful in order to solve problems, to figure things out. And so for me, an example of that is I had to learn SQL and Tableau on the job. I actually didn't have those skills when I got on. And so I did have kind of the initial training session, have, the data camp, course academy, whatever it may be. But then after that, you really have to just look things up on your own, use your resources, ask the people around you. And so that's kind of the biggest challenge for me, is having to kind of do my own research and figuring out, how to do something, a small little thing to change the bar chart, things like that. And I've had to also apply that to learning the corporate partnerships business, having to learn, how it relates to the tickets, to the media, all of that, and just learning how to gain that knowledge in the business. That's kind of how I've had to adapt. But it's also been fun. I think that's part of the fun of working in a small company, is you have to, you have all these responsibilities and you wear a lot of hats. So it's been fun learning.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Could you actually like describe, maybe a typical day working as a senior data analyst at the Bulls?
Yeah, that's really hard. And I know a lot of people will say that because it changes day to day. But basically, the gist of what I do is I collaborate with the corporate partnerships team to identify what needs they have and then kind of strategize how to make that come to life. So, what that looks like every day will look different. So, for example, the VP of the partnerships team wanted to track every asset and every event for every partner that's being activated throughout the whole season, right? And that's kind of like the main objective. So what that looks like for me is basically starting this process of tracking that data in an asset management tool. And so some days I'm hosting training sessions for their sales reps and the partnership marketing reps to help them learn how to track it in CRM and in that tool. Other days, I'm just gathering the data that they've put in and creating visualizations with graphs and charts, and making sure I'm creating reports that are meaningful to the stakeholders. And then other days, I'm meeting with the leadership team to give them a summary of the insights and kind of gather what feedback they need, so then I can repeat the process of creating the charts, improving the process. So it really changes day to day, but the that, like I said, in a small organization, you take charge of the whole process from front end to back end. And so I kind of just take ownership of all of that.
Yeah, that's great. And you work closely with the VPs and the directors of corporate partnerships. So, could you share examples of like how some of the insights that you formed have like shaped high level decision making with the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah, for sure. One example I can think of is kind of in the beginning of when I started, I helped kind of revamp the performance metrics that the business development or the partnership sales team uses for their reps. And so, what that looked like is they have this program of how they kind of track how many touch points each rep has with every prospect or partner that they own, and how they kind of evaluate how much they're doing throughout the month or throughout a week. And so what that looked like for me is I kind of looked at all the data that was available, whether it's historical data in CRM, the touch points that they've used, the amount of time that they have throughout the week, creating a model with all of those different inputs, and then pushing out some sort of recommendation. And so I was able to do that really in the first few months that I started working, and that I made recommendations to the VP and director of the partnership sales team on what kind of touch points, the number of touch points, and the number of metrics that they should be looking at on a month to month basis. And so they were able to to see the data, to kind of understand, oh, okay, this is the number of metrics that make sense. And then I was able to push that out to the reps, train the reps, and basically have this new program. So now they still use those same performance metrics till today, and I have a live report that they check all the time. So that's kind of an easy win in the beginning for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds really interesting. Previously in this podcast, you kind of described some of the technical skills that you have to take on. Which tools and programming languages are most critical to your day-to-day workflow? And are there like any emerging technologies or methods in business analytics that excite you or you think could be useful for the team?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think in terms of tools, the main tools that we use are SQL for gathering data, analyzing data, creating queries that creates the right data set to, power our reports. And then for data visualization, we use Tableau. So that's kind of our main tool that we use. And so those are, I think when it comes to tools, that's kind of the main tools that we use in terms of just day to day. But nowadays we're actually creating, it's a big project, a big undertaking that we're working on right now, is creating our own data warehouse in house. And so we used to use kind of a third party to source all our data and house it. Now we're creating our own. So in terms of exciting, emerging technologies that we're using Snowflake in order to, house that data. DBT. I personally am still learning a lot of these things. I'm not the one in charge of it, but that's why it's exciting to me because it's new tools that I've never used before. DBT is an exciting tool to kind of see the flow of that data come through. GitHub, Fivetran, all of those kind of source or not sources, software tools to kind of bring everything into our own data warehouse. So that's really exciting for us.
Yeah, it's really cool, like to see, like how technology is, just evolving over time and how that's being applied to so many different environments. To the extent which you can like reveal, is there like a particular analysis or project you work on with the bulls that kind of
Mhm.
stands out as innovative in some way?
Um, as innovative, like I said, the data warehouse project is beco- becoming really important and innovative for us because that's something that not a lot of teams have. Creating an in-house data warehouse, basically. So that's really exciting and innovative. I think for me, my own personal project that I've enjoyed, like I mentioned, is kind of this asset delivery tracking that we've used, and kind of creating a process in which the partnership marketing reps, they're able to track every single event, um, asset that they deliver. And the reason why I've really enjoyed it is because I was able to kind of go through the process all the way from the front end, creating this process that they're able to use, that's user friendly, that's hopefully a simpler process than it was before. And then into the back end of seeing that data come to life, creating reports from it, being able to answer my stakeholders questions through that. That's kind of what I've really enjoyed in terms of something impactful. um, and then lastly, just an example that I like for myself, I think it's important to know your personal wins. It wasn't the hardest or most complicated analysis, but being able to track activations for our community relations team and then creating a summary at the end of it, I think those are some of the more rewarding projects because you're able to see how much the Chicago Bulls really has an impact in the community with the amount of activations we have throughout the city, and that for me is a personal win.
Yeah, that sounds great. Kind of turning over to like some advice you may have, like what advice would you give to like aspiring analysts who want to work in the NBA or other sports organizations, particularly in the field of business analytics?
For sure. Yeah, I think the two main things when it comes to like hard skills that you want to know is really just finding a way to gather the data and analyze it. So for us that's SQL, but that could look different for everyone. And then finding a way to visualize that data. And again, for us that's Tableau, but some people use Power BI, some people use other tools. And I think kind of having some go-to tools that you're using for those two skills are the most important for analysts. But I think beyond that, honestly, working on your soft skills is actually really important because, you can pick up all those skills through a course, through practice, through your own personal projects. But being able to communicate, the insights that you've drawn, being able to build relationships with your stakeholders, finding the ways to be resourceful because sports teams are typically small, those are the things that will really make you stand out. So I think, as much as you're practicing the hard skills, finding ways to practice the soft skills and perfecting those is also really important.
Yeah, that's a great description of some of the skills that you need. And I don't know if you've like been involved in the recruiting process, but when like when hiring analysts for your team, are there any like portfolio projects that maybe stand out, like to the extent you can reveal?
Yeah, that's a good question, and maybe I should have asked what I'm allowed to reveal. But I think the gist of kind of what we look for, like I said, is being able to analyze data and communicate it. And so we have different, I don't want to give away all our secrets, but part of what we look at, obviously, there's we'll look at projects here and there, but we also provide projects. And when we look at those, projects, or, when we're going through interviews, we're looking at how do you think? How do you problem solve? How do you, find ways to solve the problem and address a need in a creative way that, that actually, I guess, answers the business objective at hand. But beyond that, really finding a good way to communicate it. Because a lot of times we are technical professionals. We work on our technical skills all the time. But when we communicate it to our stakeholders, not all of them are working on the exact same skills. So the way you communicate with them has to be more, just it has to be translated to a way that they can understand, in the same way that we don't live in their world, and when they talk to us they have to translate to us in a way that we understand. So being able to communicate it is so important. So I think that's what makes analysts stand out for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's really helpful advice. And kind of to like summarize that all, like when like for someone starting out in this area, would you say the technical side or the business focused side is, I guess, more important to master first? If
I think the technical side, because there's no way of you really, unless you already are working in sports, there's no way of you knowing the ticketing business or the corporate partnerships business or the marketing business, digital marketing. There's ways of you trying to learn it, but until you really work in it, that's going to be a whole new world for you. But having the technical skills and the soft skills that go with the technical skills, being able to communicate, being able to build relationships, those are what's transferable to any department that you work in. So right now I work with corporate partnerships, but if I were to be put with a ticketing department, I'd have to learn that business anyway. But I already know how to work with SQL, work with Tableau, work with different stakeholders. So definitely starting out with those is I think most important.
Yeah, that sounds great. And our platform here at Sport Analytics, focuses on educating and certifying aspiring analysts. So, would you say there are any specific skills or topics that we kind of should include in our certification programs if we decide to, kind of expand into the business analytics area?
Um, hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to, just skills that you're learning, like I mentioned, if you have SQL, I think you guys have like R and Python and things like that. Those are not as necessary, but good to have. I think SQL is probably the most important for analysts because you have to find a way to, get gather the data that actually matters, and a lot of times the data is already there. And so, yeah, so I think kind of in terms of tools and different ways of visualizing data is really important. So whether it's a specific Tableau course or really just, ways to show the data in a way that's creative. So let's say like, you're given a problem to solve. How can I present, month to month, how many metrics these reps are putting up, and being able to showcase how I would think about that, how would I would visualize it, whether it's through R, through Python, through Tableau, through whatever, even through Excel, through PowerPoint. Really, it doesn't matter as long as you're able to do the job. When it comes to the business analytics field, I think, CRM is something I work in really closely, and it's something that's not too difficult to pick up once you're in the job. But if that's something that, let's say, other companies or, open jobs are looking for, I think having some sort of CRM experience helps, just so you know what it looks like, whether it's Salesforce, for us it's Dynamics. And then if you want to dab in, take a little dab in ticketing, marketing, partnerships, analytics, those are kind of three different departments that usually use analytics on the business side. So yeah, those are pretty good ways to start.
Yeah, yeah, it's really helpful advice. Thank you. kind of transitioning to some other role you have, you're also a member of the Women in Sports and Events organization. Could you tell us a little bit more of your involvement with that organization and how it has influenced your career and personal growth in the industry?
Yeah, right now I am still more of a member. I haven't gotten into kind of taking more responsibility when it comes to the organization. I know a lot of times there's chairs, things like that. So as a member, I have really enjoyed just networking and getting to know different women in this, in this industry. It's really helped me kind of expand my reach when it comes to what I can see in the future, the things that I can accomplish, the type of, parts of the business and the industry that I can touch. Because it's women in sports and events, it's not even just sports. I've actually met someone who worked for Pepsi as the main marketing person there. So when it comes to like Super Bowl, she was always at every single event, kind of taking charge of whatever promotion they had. And so it's really interesting to see how much there is. So it could be someone working in Pepsi, or there's also this woman that I met that worked that kind of created her own startup that focuses on like biomed but sports focused. So I think it's a lot more just the different, you know different avenues you can take in sports and events. That's kind of a big thing that I've learned. But also beyond wise, I actually am part of the women's elevation employee resource group here at the Bulls. And that has been really fun because with that, I've been able to take more responsibility as kind of a co-chair of professional development, being able to kind of create events and, create this small cohort of women that really want to work up in their career. That's kind of something that, that's really fulfilled me and helped me grow in my own career here at the Bulls.
Yeah, that's great. And like relate to that, that skill of leadership, what are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned, ranging from the time when you were a college athlete to your current role at the Bulls? And what would you like share with aspiring analysts who hope to, reach a leadership position in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you're an athlete, when you're, a manager, or even just a senior data analyst that takes charge of your own, stakeholders, I think the most important things are one, taking ownership of your work. And I think that sounds like such an easy thing, but a lot of times, sometimes, you wait for the stakeholder to reach out to you, or you wait for your manager to give you feedback. And I think when you're in a leadership position, you can't wait. You have to take ownership. You have to anticipate what your stakeholder needs. You have to kind of look at your work and see, where do I need feedback? Where can I improve? And I think that's something that as an athlete, you're always trying to do. You're always trying to grow. You're not waiting for a coach to tell you, you need to be better at this. You want to do it. You want, you scored however many points this last game. You want to score more. You try to figure out what ways can I practice certain shots. It's the same thing in the professional world. I just presented something to the corporate partnerships team. Where could I have improved? Where did they ask questions that I could have anticipated for next time? I think as a leader, that's where you really stand out. And hopefully that's something that I can continue doing as I actually get into more leadership roles. And then secondly, I think, like I said, the relationship building piece is really important because, you don't work in anything on your own. Like, yes, we're data people, we're on our computers a lot, but the work that we're doing, we have to collaborate with, with our stakeholders, with our managers, with our peers. And so being able to build those relationships, helping them kind of find confidence in your work, and also asking them questions, bouncing off ideas. Those are really important.
Yeah, that's great. And want to ask, regarding the future, what changes do you anticipate in the field of business analytics? With all the technology, new
Yeah.
forms of technology coming in, and how it could play a role in the field of business analytics.
Yeah. People always joke that sports is a little bit behind the rest of the world when it comes to technology. And so I think we're just catching up to, all the other industries, especially, I think when it comes to technology, when it comes to analytics, and you can kind of see in the basketball world too, right? I know you talk to a lot of more basketball focus instead of business focus, and that's also an emerging thing there. When it comes to analytics, you're kind of learning, how to involve analytics in a day-to-day and decision making. And so on the business analytics side, for us, the reason why our team has grown so much is we've really tried to emphasize, utilizing the data to inform decision making. And so when it comes to us and our stakeholders, what that means is from the start, creating this culture of data focus and analytics focused decision making, kind of involving it in the process for stakeholders when they're creating, when they're making decisions. And so I think it starts with that, is just like building this culture of being really data minded. And then obviously what comes not, it doesn't follow, I guess it kind of works in tandem, is kind of involving more technologies. So like I mentioned, for us is really involving, creating our own data warehouse, really trying to take charge and take ownership of our data and really making sure it's clean. It's the processes are standardized so that we're not having to, look back and fix errors from the past. So I think it's really emerging right now, the all of the technology, all of the analytics, for sure.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. And I just want to conclude by asking,
Yeah.
if you have any final words of wisdom for aspiring analysts or advice for us as we, grow this podcast and our educational platform.
Yeah, I mean, first I want to say, give you your props. This is really cool. I commend you for, starting something, and especially, something that I feel like is, if you're passionate, then other people are passionate about it. So I think that's really fun and really inspiring to see. When it comes to advice for aspiring analysts and for you and for anyone really, I think for me, what's really worked is finding something that you're interested in, because it's hard to learn new things when you're doing it on your own. It's different when you're in school, and I mean, sometimes school is still hard also, but when you're in school, it's kind of a set program for you. It's classes that you go to, or when you're at work, you have to do this because you have to make the money. And so I think when you're doing things on your own, I think you want to find something you're interested in. If it's basketball, if it's other sports, or if it's really any subject matter, really finding that topic that you like and then diving into it. If you want to create a project and analyze it, do it because you're interested in it. And then when you hit you hit a stuck point or a problem, then you can research how to solve it. And the reason why you'll do that is because you actually find interest in doing it. And so I think really finding a topic that you like and then just diving in, just you know who cares if it looks bad or if you make mistakes, just try and then you'll solve the problems after that. So I think really, yeah, I guess when it comes to growing your skills, when it comes to finding ways to communicate it to people, whether it's posting or just sharing it with other people, really finding the thing that is your niche and then just going from there.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Mazel. Like, that was really helpful advice. And thanks a lot for taking your time to be on this podcast today.
For sure, no problem. Let me know if there's anything else I can do for y'all.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.